All right, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Shaya Metz, and I'm with the Prime Secretariat. And this is the side event for the Summit of the Future on Elevating Youth Voices, Shaping Responsible Leadership for a Sustainable Future. And I will go ahead and pass it off to my colleague, Dr. Omid Ashari, who is our Senior Advisor at Prime, to kick us off. Omid, over to you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Thank you to all online from around the world who are joining us for this official side event of the UN Summit of the Future. Prime is honored to be hosting this side event, highlighting one of the summit's themes, which is youth and future generations. We have an exciting program for you today, focusing on elevating youth voices, something which is very, very important to our work. I want to thank the Prime Secretariat for helping to organize this event, as well as Marin Adendu, the Executive Director of the Higher Education for Good Foundation, our partner for today's event, and the leader behind the wonderful Youth Task Initiative, which we will be diving in today. I also like to thank Rochelle Prasad, our Youth Talks ambassador, who will be sharing her stories and experiences. And lastly, I would like to thank Alec Verson for leading our research efforts into the Youth Talks data set. And of course, to all our researchers who will be presenting their work today. A word to the partnership. The Principles for Responsible Management Education, Prime, has partnered with the Higher Education for Good Foundation to accelerate impact on transforming responsible management education. The foundation was originally founded by Xema Business School, which is a Prime signatory member, and by Xema Endowment Fund to develop and promote new models of higher education for a sustainable society. New higher education models should, though, go beyond the focus on the acquisition of workplace skills, something which is the focus, and balancing this with an education that empowers young people with the means of realizing themselves, actualizing themselves, encouraging them to actually adopt a systemic worldview in which humankind cohabits in harmony with other living beings within planetary boundaries. And in order to achieve this mission, a massive initiative called Youth Talks was created. And the Youth Talks initiative is an unprecedented large-scale research project designed to really understand the hopes and trying to explore the expectations of young people about how they enter work, further education, and also higher education. And while descriptive statistics already provide useful information, the use of open-ended questions in research design promise to give educators deeper insights into the hopes, needs, and expectations of young people. There is also qualitative analysis, of course, of the data, which the focus is on, and it is collected from 45,000 young people between age 15 to 29 years, all in 212 countries around the world. And this is expected to make a significant contribution to existing literature in the field of responsible management education. This analysis of Youth Talks data and its subsequent findings is intended to influence educational policy and curriculum design in business and management schools, and to provide researchers with complementary access to a truly unique data set. Prime and the Higher Ed for Goods Foundation have established a cohort of researchers to analyze the Youth Talks data set from different perspectives, with the aim of writing papers and informing the Summit of the Future. And the cohort has been led by Alec Verson, who is an honorary research fellow at Glasgow School of Business and Society. Today we'll hear what the preliminary results are. A word to Prime. Prime is the academic arm with the core focus on responsible leadership and transformation of higher education, the academic arm of the UN Global Compact that helps to steer the corporate world towards more sustainable, equitable, and inclusive ways of how to conduct business. Now that we better understand key global challenges related to climate, health, and inequality, at least, we are making quite a lot of progress scientifically already. We have both opportunity and obligation to take collective action. So thought leadership in itself is not enough. We'll need to move on towards action leadership. And companies committed to responsible business practices and ecosystems that really foster positive change can help deliver the Paris Agreement and the SDGs. Now, to make this contribution, the private sector needs leaders who have the type of a mindset, the skills and capabilities to live up to this aspiration, to this hope. And Prime, I'm convinced, is thus uniquely positioned to make this influence on business and management schools around the world. Concerning academia and how to really deliver change. Higher education is not just a factor, it is the key factor to deliver results in this decade of action, as we say, on the Sustainable Development Goals. And there are many deep and compelling reasons for that, and I'm sure we would have wonderful discussions around it. But we know that in these challenging times, it has become clearer than ever that we do need a new generation of leaders who are capable, responsible, and who can build greater momentum for sustainable development, because the pace we have right now is simply not high enough. Today's young people will soon be the heads of companies, governments, national organizations, multilateral organizations. Many are already entrepreneurs, activists, and also leaders in their own right. And that is why institutions of higher education are the perfect place to, help future leaders in how to bring about this change. One of the outputs of the Summit of the Future is the Declaration of Future Generations. The Declaration of Future Generations, in this text, it really calls for governments to leverage science, data, statistics, and strategic foresight to ensure long-term thinking and planning. And this is exactly what we aim to do during today's side event. We do hope that the stories, the experiences, the data sets, all the insights which are provided today, that they can put youth voices and issues at the forefront of decision making. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be connected with you all today. Thank you all for your interest. I would like to take that opportunity, first of all, to warmly thank Omid. Omid, thank you very much for this inspiring speech. I could not agree more with all the statements that you made, of course. And I would also like to thank, of course, the whole team at Prime Secretariat, including Sophie, Cheyenne, and Philippa. Last but not least, Alec Versen, without whom this session would not have been possible. Thank you very much, Alec. Thank you, the whole team. We will have the pleasure to hear Alec for the closing remarks of our session today. So, to start quickly, maybe about some information about myself. So I'm an engineer. I also have a background in political science. I have a master in political science and a PhD in innovation management. I'm also a faculty member at Schema Business School that Omid mentioned at the beginning. Of course, I don't teach anymore as I spend most of my time leading this amazing project. I'm the CEO of the Higher Education for Good Foundation, but also the director of Youth Talks. Youth Talks being the first and main project of the foundation right now. Today, I'm accompanied by Rochelle, our amazing Youth Talks ambassador. I could see in the chat that we have also many Youth Talks ambassadors connected today. Thank you very, very much for being with us. It means a lot. Rochelle, I would like to thank you for your work and your support. And we will have the pleasure to hear more about your experience with Youth Talks just after my speech this morning. So my mission right now is to give you a quick overview of what is Youth Talks. I will also share with you some of the very descriptive key findings of Youth Talks, which are the results of a classic natural language processing analysis. But of course, the heart of today's presentation will be led by the researchers who will, after my intervention, shortly share with us the initial key insights from their research conducted using Youth Talks datasets. They are the ones we are honoring today, so thank you to all of you. Thank you for your amazing work. Rodolphe, who has been a member of the Youth Talk Scientific Committee since the beginning of the journey, is also with us today. He is now in charge of coordinating research around Youth Talks and will introduce the second part of the presentation again after mine. So a huge thank you to you, Rodolphe, for all your work. All right, so let's get started. We don't have much time, so I might go through all my presentation very quickly, but please know that all the information is available on the Youth Talks website, so do not hesitate to go on that website. Philippa or Cheyenne, maybe you can put the link of the website in the chat right now. Thank you very much. Okay, so what is Youth Talks? Next slide, please, Cheyenne. So the mission of Youth Talks is to bring the voices of the young people to the attention of organizations and decision makers, so we can influence their actions to better meet the needs and aspirations of young people. Of course, all this is related to sustainable development, as you can imagine. And the reason why Youth Talks is very different from traditional surveys is because we ask young people open-ended questions. We make sure to not prevent them from thinking very freely. We do not ask them only closed-ended questions where they have to, tick a box. They can share with us whatever they want on a specific topic. The reason why we could not do that kind of consultation, so we don't like to call it a survey, we like to call it a consultation. The reason why we couldn't make that kind of consultation before is because we didn't have the tools to really analyze efficiently the answers from the young people, right? So now, thanks to natural language processing, to AI, generative AI tools, etc., we are able to take all this information coming from the young people and do something with it. Next slide, please. So some key numbers, key performance indicators about Youth Talks. Since the launch of Youth Talks, so you have to imagine that we started with this project two and a half years ago. We started from scratch. It did not exist before. We didn't have any partner. It was like nothing, basically. And we had this crazy dream, hey, let's try to ask young people around the world what they really think about specific topic, what are their aspirations, needs, etc. So we are super proud to tell you that today, through the first edition of Youth Talks and also another consultation specifically on AI, we collected the insights coming from more than 50,000 participants, so 50,000 young people coming from 212 countries and territories. The target is 15 to 29 years old. We have more than 70 partners with very special partners, and PRIME is one of our special partners, as well as the Club of Rome. And now the UNESCO is also an important partner of Youth Talk. We have more than 3,000 ambassadors around the world. As I mentioned before, some of them are connected with us today, so thank you. And we collected more than 1 million ideas, insights from young people. You have to know that young people could also upload images, pictures, and they could also record their voices. Next slide, please. So maybe to sum up what I just mentioned, what is Youth Talks? Youth Talks is this amazing space of expression for the young people around the world. We collect what they have to say, we digest everything, and we produce deliverables. And these deliverables could be different according to the stakeholders that we target. And with this mission, always the same mission, to inform and feed these various stakeholders. So if you could go ahead, Cheyenne or Philippa. Okay. And so we inform education institutions, as Omid mentioned. We also inform companies, youth organizations. We also inform, of course, the media, governments and political institutions, as well as the public in general. And this is the reason why everything, all the results, all the deliverables are available online on the Youth Talks website. Next, please. Youth Talks is a continuous initiative, as you can understand. So we launched our first edition 2002-2023, 22-23. It was what we like to call the first edition of Youth Talks, with very, I would say, large questions about their aspirations, as I mentioned, needs, etc. And then we decided to launch a second consultation focused on artificial intelligence, and we're about to launch another one, so the edition 2, in partnership with the UNESCO on mental health and well-being. Next, please. So this is the map showing the geographical zones during the Youth Talks first edition, where we were able to collect testimonies from the young people. So as you can see, we had young people coming from everywhere in the world, which also makes that initiative very specific. Next, please. I don't want to spend much time on this, but this is just a comparison of what we achieved compared to what was achieved before this initiative, the Youth Talks initiative. These reports and these initiatives are very interesting also, by the way, so I also encourage you to go and take a look. All of the results are complementary results in that sense. And but yeah, as you can see here, having for the first edition more than 45,000 participants was really something new. And that's the reason why, and also asking open-ended questions is very new and very innovative in that sense. So that's the reason why today we have the chance and pleasure to work with a lot of organizations who are super interested to get these results, to better understand what young people need, so they can use that as foundational information for their strategic plans, for the future, the way they want to design organization, etc. So this is really our mission, to feed the building of the future in that sense. Next, please. Okay, some key learnings. So we have a lot of findings thanks to this amazing consultation. I will not have time to go through all of them, of course. So again, I encourage you to go on the website and check for yourself. But it's my pleasure to share with you the 3 to 4 key insights here regarding the first edition of Youth Talks. One of the questions that we asked to young people was, when I think about the future, what I wish for myself, what do you wish for yourself? And here, what you can see are the different results, the different top 5 priorities according to the different regions of the world. So here, as you can see, the graphics are just on the top of the specific regions that we targeted. So you see North America, Europe, and Central Asia, etc., etc. What we could see asking that questions to the young people is that personal happiness is very important all around the world, except in sub-Saharan and Africa. You have to imagine that the way we created the clusters, so as I mentioned before here, we use natural language processing to analyze everything that young people shared with us, right? And we made sure to stay very close from what they answered. So you have to imagine that when I say here that one of the top priority is personal happiness, it means that most of the young people mention happiness, personal happiness in what they shared with us. So it was, for example, you have to imagine they could say, for example, okay, in the future, I wish that I will be happy, etc., etc. The top 5 priorities here show, as I just mentioned, the importance of personal happiness, especially in the Western world, which is, I think, quite interesting. What we realized analyzing these results, these findings, is that when they mentioned in the future, what I wish for myself is personal happiness, probably meant that right now, personal happiness was not so high, right? So that was an interesting finding. The financial situation was very important in North America and also in other regions of the world, etc., etc. So I could go on forever here. Again, please go and check the report online. Next, please. Another question, when I think about the future, what I wish this time for the world, here it was amazing to see that peace comes first, even before environmental protection, although, as you can see, environmental protection is also scores also very high, but peace is the first concern. Next, please. Last but not least, regarding this edition, and it will allow me to make the transition with the next consultation that we organized. When we ask young people, okay, so to build this desired future, so they had to answer other questions that you can imagine before that. So it helped them to think about what kind of future they want. So to build this desired future, what we must all learn at school is, so here what we were asking them is, okay, what is the top priority? This was the most striking results of Youth Talks consultation. As you can see, everywhere in the world except, and here we put China, because it was very interesting to see that it was not a priority in China, not the top priority in China, but everywhere in the world, the top priority is what we called personal values and virtues. Here in this box, we put together all the answers of the young people mentioning very specific human values. So all of them talked about open-mindedness, empathy, solidarity, and respect, for example. So many other human values like this. I'm not sure if we did well to call that cluster personal values and virtues. What you need to understand here is that young people did not mention specifically, I mean, it was definitely not a priority. They did not talk about mathematics. They didn't talk about technology. They didn't talk about, I don't know, management, you name it. All of them mentioned first, okay, what we need to build the future that we want is to relearn these specific human values and virtues, meaning that what they need is to be able again to have this common foundation, to be able to build this society where people are able to work together and go together toward the same direction. What they want, in fact, is to be human again. So it's really interesting. Following this, we decided to launch this other very focused consultation on Youth Talks on AI, because as you can imagine, we talk about AI all the time right now. AI, I mean, in the press, in the media, every day, this is what we talk about. So, hey, how come young people did not specifically mention artificial intelligence? So next, please. So we launched that initiative next. It was smaller initiative, very more focused, and we had more than 5,000 participants coming from all over the world. Next, please. You will see that on this slide. We were not able to have young people answering from Russia, and Eastern Europe, unfortunately, was a bit low, but we had a fair balanced composition of the sample here. Next, please. We ask young people what they think about AI in education, AI and well-being, and AI and the planet. I will not have time to go through all my slides here. And again, please go on the website, everything is available. But what we found, and we will go through the next few slides very quickly, Cheyenne. First of all, they don't want, for example, they don't want to replace professors by robots. They really ask for keeping the professors in the classroom. They want to keep this human relationship. Next, please. This is a comparison between Asia and Europe. It's funny to see that in Asia, they are more willing to replace professors with robots, but still, they still prefer professors, as you can see. Next, please. We talked about ChatGPT. We asked them if they were willing to use ChatGPT without regulation, without being able to really understand what ChatGPT produces for them. As you can see here, they really ask us to help them to use that tool. They want to use it selectively, and they want to make sure that it does not remove their creativity or whatever they can lose along the process. Critical thinking, for example. Next, please. We asked them about AI at work, AI in well-being, AI at work. Next, please. We made comparison between the different regions of the world. So again, this is just a teaser to make sure that you want to go online and check the results. Again, next, please. And we also asked them about data privacy. It was funny to see here that the youngest person were more afraid of sharing their data and personal data. We also asked them about virtual reality, etc., etc. All in all, to sum up, next, please. Just to sum up here, all in all, it was very coherent with what we found with the first edition of Youth Talks. Young people don't get really excited about AI as older generation can get. They know that they will to live with it, but they are very wise about the way we should use it. They want to make sure that we understand that they are not willing to give up their humanity for it. They want to really keep human relationships at the center of the picture. And this is all related with the future of education, and especially in management education. This is very important to understand this. Yes, we have these amazing tools that we can use, but we still need to make sure that we are able to function as humans all together. We produced this manifesto also with the young people, so please go online and check that manifesto. It was co-built, co-written with the young people, and it really shows what they want and what they need in terms of AI, the use of AI for the future. Next, please. Okay, I have to end now. I would like to give the floor to Rochelle. As I mentioned, we are about to launch another consultation about mental health and well-being with the UNESCO. What you can see at the screen right now are our amazing ambassadors all around the world organizing activities, sometimes with our help, sometimes even without our help. They create T-shirts with Youth Talks on it, etc., etc. So Youth Talks, to conclude, Youth Talks is not a polling institute. Youth Talks is really like a movement. We encourage young people to freely share what they have to say, and our engagement is to make sure that we will support them, and we will make sure to bring their voices to the organizations all around the world. Thank you very much for your attention. Rochelle, it's your turn. Thank you for being with us. Please tell us more about your experience with Youth Talks.
Yes, sounds good. Bula, hello everyone. My name is Rochelle, and I'm currently calling you from the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, otherwise known as Surrey, BC. Super quick here. So grateful for my ancestors for giving me the opportunity to be here today, as well as a huge thank you to Prime and to Higher Education Foundation for Good, and as well as Youth Talks. I'm going to cut it a little bit short here today. My story, I'm going to start off with my story, go into Youth Talks, and end it with a quick statement for you to follow your action point here. So my story begins at the age of 14. I became a rebel for social justice causes in this era of my life. And this was a year I started my nonprofit Spark Foundation and got more interested in organizations just like Youth Talks. And in this year, I embarked on journeys in Ecuador, Kenya, and Fiji, and I fundraised my way around the globe, all driven by a passion for education and a vision to build stronger institutions in Canada and around the world. And along the way, I encountered so many barriers as a young person. It was so difficult to make a difference without adults telling me that I'm too young to make a difference. Or when I was pitching my NPO for funding, there were people, adults are older than me, saying, we're not going to be able to invest in you, or we can't really look at a youth-led organization right now. And that was very frustrating. All these decisions really did impact the way I grew as a social entrepreneur. And because of all those hardships, I decided, okay, I have to go full throttle right now. I got to dedicate my life to empowering the next generation instead of stepping back, because if not me, then who? So this is where my journey started, with that moment of saying, all right, we got to build this thing. I have to see how I can have other youth join this mission and find other organizations that are willing to support youth. So my whole journey from when I was a teen to now has included publishing a novel, running in a municipal election, which is this whole other story, almost winning a seat, leading a global NPO, and now serving as a university lecturer and classroom educator, all before my 26th birthday. So you see, youth engagement is not about including young people in conversation. It's about empowering them to lead while including them. It's about collaborating with them. So in my work with Spark Foundation as a teacher and as an ambassador with Youth Talks, I've seen firsthand how and what happens to youth in a positive light when they're given the platform to express their ideas and drive change. Young people today are not waiting for change. We are creating it alongside you. And to truly harness our power, we have to provide youth education that aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals. And by focusing on SDG education, we are equipping youth in our classrooms with the skills they need to tackle huge pressing challenges like climate action, inequality, and social justice. So switching gears a little bit now, as a university lecturer, this is exactly what I do in my classrooms. I prioritize the SDGs curriculum, and I do this by student-led activities and by bringing the community into the classroom. Take away those walls, express what's going on in the community, and get the students involved in that as well. And this whole approach goes beyond teaching concepts. It's about empowering students to take action. So, long story short here, Youth Talks has provided us with clear data. It's provided us with youth and their insights on sustainability, leadership, and the future that we want to shape. So my message here is, as leaders and as educators, it's our role to use data sets like Youth Talks and make sure that we're able to utilize this in a way that makes a difference, not in the lives of the people in our classroom, but also in our communities. So reflecting back to my 14-year-old self now, the kid who dreamed big and was frustrated by adults who didn't understand, etc., I now fully appreciate the importance of youth engagement. And I know without the opportunities for youth engagement I had in my teens, I might never have landed that investor pitch or considered running for political office or even gotten introduced to Youth Talks and amazing mentors. So again, another message for you is keep creating inclusive incubators for youth and their ideas, as well as to lean into the Youth Talks dataset. Maybe one day they'll have a chance to secure that funding and impact 500,000 more youth around the world, or simply share their passion of the SDGs with their neighbors, just as I have, well, and will continue to do. So thank you again for listening to my quick little spiel here in my story. If you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, I'll drop it in the chat. Back to the team. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Just before handing the floor to Rodolphe, again, thank you for being here, Rochelle, and thank you for your support. As I mentioned before, what I showed you are very descriptive results using Youth Talks dataset, but right now what we really need is more research to make sure that we grasp the full power of the data that we collected. And for this, it's my pleasure to introduce Rodolphe, who is in charge of coordinating all this research. Rodolphe, over to you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. So next slide, please. Next. Well, just to give you a brief bio. So as Maureen said, I am a researcher. So I teach and at the same time to do research. So for instance, on global risk. And therefore, I've always been very interested in trying to find out what we can tease out of the youthful data. I mean, broad statistics are interesting, but obviously we want to make a case based on rigorous evidence-based research. And to do so, obviously, we can rely on this new innovative youthful data. So if you're interested in using the youthful data, what can you find in this data? Well, the next slide. Well, first of all, you will have plenty of answers to open-ended questions. And that's very interesting because open-ended questions, obviously, don't lead the young people. They are free to answer whatever they want on whatever topics they want. And as you can see, we try to be very careful in crafting our questions and trying, in a sense, to get answers on very broad but important topics for young people and for the world, and what they want, what they expect, and what they're worried about. So for instance, you can see you've got a question about the future, what I wish for myself, but also what I wish for the world, and also on collective issues, or, and that's very important, what young people are willing to give up and what they're not willing to give up. And again, they have been able to answer in a very open and straightforward way without having us, leading them to in terms of answers. Also, what you will find in the data open to researchers, next slide, is a questionnaires and answer to questionnaires on empathy. So empathy is a big topic. I mean, some people will be talking about the edge of empathy. It becomes more and more important in a sense to expand our circle of empathy, to go beyond borders, to think about other people in terms of geography, but also in terms of time, about future generations, obviously. And this question of empathy, well, helps young people to think about how they feel, about themselves, about other people, but sometimes for researchers, it's very interesting because they can make a link between the empathy levels of people and the answers and see, in a sense, what is empathy, what can cause empathy, how empathy can emerge, or how you can trigger empathy as well. So that's something else you can use well to support research. In the next slide. Oh, so we've been a bit fast in the slides. I think some slides are missing, but never mind. So in the next slide, you will have seen, well, the fact that we have obviously collected data on the characteristics of respondents. That is to say, we know about their current situation, their year of birth and genders, education levels. So everything you need to control, in a sense, for, well, first of all, whose respondents are, but also to get an idea about how demography, in a sense, shapes the answers of young people. So for instance, their income, thank you very much, their income levels may obviously have an impact on how they feel about the world. It's possible that, for instance, well, first of all, before caring about the rest of the world, you may care more about yourself if you are a very poor person, or vice versa. I mean, obviously, everything is free to move around. We don't have any kind of prior, and obviously researchers are free to explore data in any way they want. And in the next slide, well, as Maureen has hinted, and I would like to emphasize again, it's a very broad data set with more than 40,000 participants. And obviously, sometimes I do not answer all questions, but very often you will find thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of full answers with answers to the open-ended questions, to the segmentation questions, and to the empathy questions. And it's very interesting as well, you know, to have a broad range of participants coming from all over the world. So you get a kind of representative sample, or at least as representative as you can get in this kind of exercise. So something else which seems to us important is the fact that not only we've collected data on open-ended questions, data on empathy and certain empathy questionnaires, data on demographic characteristics, but also we've got video interviews. And with video interviews, obviously, well, you can, in a sense, again, get another kind of data sources that you can use for research. And obviously, in addition to video footage, we've got transcripts of all interviews available. So as you can see, we've got a very rich data set where you can have lots of data in support of research on whatever you are interested in. You could be interested in world peace, you could be interested in climate change, you could be interested in empathy, you could be interested in violence, you could be interested in education. Well, as long in a sense that it's related to the youth concerns, well, obviously you will find the answer in the Youth Talk dataset. And it's a very original, very innovative dataset. So in the next slide, well, I would like to thank the PRIME research team, all the PRIME researchers worldwide. I mean, we have engaged in a very fruitful partnership, a very exciting partnership. And as you will see very soon, plenty of researchers worldwide from Austria, from Germany, Hungary, Malaysia, Russia, the Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, United States of America, well, have done their best to draw rigorous and practical insight from these first Youth Talk consultations. They have been working very hard to present their first results today. I would like to thank them again and again. They have done an amazing job coming up with creative research questions and trying to do their best to leverage Youth Talk data. So what happened? Well, we had monthly meetings where we discussed research ideas, coordinate initiatives, and what is very important in a sense is to forge this global connection to create an international Youth Talk research community. And that's very important. My belief is not only we need to make the Youth Talk consultations visible worldwide through many events, but also we need to find legitimacy thanks to very rigorous research. In that way, well, my belief is we will have more impact since we will combine visibility and, in a sense, as a rigor of research. So our researchers, as you will see, our 10 research teams so far, well, they have worked on various topics, including how sustainability mindset principles map with global young voices. We'll find how Youth Talk inform about work-related fears and hope, how empathy is, in a sense, impacted or shaped by gender, education, income, why empathy may be important to develop global citizenship or environmental values, what young people are willing to learn, are willing to prioritize in their educations, and also how your culture, in a sense, shapes the kind of sacrifices you may be willing to make to secure a better future. So to finish and to give you just a broad idea of the just topics before leaving the floor to our researchers, well, you can see in the next slide, the work in progress. So 10 teams, as you can see, coming from very different institutions all over the world, from different genders as well, working on very different topics, all exciting, all very, very promising. And obviously, my belief is that we will find all these papers soon published in high-quality journal, which once again will give more legitimacy to our initiative. Thank you very much.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're actually located. And welcome to this Summit of the Future UN event, which is part of the actions to determine to realize, if you like, the Pact of the Future. Thank you, Rodolphe, for setting the scene for what's going to follow next, and before that, to Rochelle for an inspiring chat. It gives us faith in the youth of looking after the future that we want. And thanks to Marine and Omid for, again, setting the scene and making this possible. In brief, let me say that it's actually more or less a year to the day or two that the Prime Higher Education for Good partnership was actually established. At that stage, it was an idea. We have this fantastic resource of data that Rodolphe has laid out, unprecedented in its scope and scale, and offering huge potential for researchers in responsible management education to access a data set which allows for cross-country analysis, critical analysis, amongst a variety of factors. As Rodolphe pointed out, since September 2023, we've actually assembled a cohort, a community of practice of researchers from Europe, Asia, North America, Australasia, to make sense of youth voices and aspirations for the future. It is well documented in peer-reviewed research in responsible management education journals that the voice of youth is often overlooked and comes as an afterthought when educational policies are actually being designed and re-evaluated. So again, I would just like to reiterate the potential value of the Youth Talks data set to researchers in the Prime community worldwide to influence educational policy making in their own institutions, in their own business schools, but also at the national level through work perhaps through Prime regional chapters. This is the, if you like, the crux of today's event, where what we're going to do is highlight the preliminary findings of the researchers that Rodolphe listed in the previous presentation. What you'll see, to recap, is the work is characterized by diversity. It's characterized by diversity in nationality of the researchers, the lens that they use. It's characterized by diversity in the topic, ranging from empathy to work values, etc. It's represented by diversity in research methods, some being qualitative and some being quantitative, and it's characterized by diversity in scope in terms of it being national, regional, or global. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. Okay, so what we can see is since September, you'll see on the left that we've been laying some foundations. In the first year of the partnership between Prime and Higher Education for Good, what you're going to see now are these building blocks of use of the Youth Talks data by Prime researchers around the world. What will follow is a 5-minute presentation from our colleagues from around the world, starting with Gigi from Scotland. And I'm terribly excited that you've got the opportunity to get these insights now. Thank you.
Let me turn on my voice. Okay, can you hear me all right? I hope so. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I am Xi and I'm an associate lecturer. Okay, I'm an associate lecturer at the University of St. Andrews Business School, focusing on management education. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to share my research with you today, and special thanks, of course, goes to the Youth Talk team. Today I'm going, next slides, please. Thank you. So today I'm going to present the critical role that empathy plays in shaping the educational expectations of young people. We know that the landscape of education is constantly evolving, driven by the needs to meet diverse student expectations. understanding these expectations is crucial for us to create learning environment that is both inclusive and effective. One particular factor is, of course, empathy, and it is increasingly be recognized as a vital skill for success in today's interconnected world. But its role in shaping how young people envision their future education has not been fully explored. And again, thanks to the opportunity provided by Youth Talks, it allowed me to explore the central research question: how do the expectations of future education differ between participants with higher and lower empathy levels? Next slide, please. Okay, so in order to explore my research question, the data is from the Youth Talks database. More specifically, I focused on the empathy questionnaire and the question links to educational expectations, which is question 9. It asks, to develop this desired future, what we must all learn at school is. And in terms of analysis, qualitatively, I conducted the frequency of common themes in responses to question 9 and compared them across different empathy levels to identify patterns in educational expectations. On the other hand, I also conducted a quantitative research that used the binary logistic regressions to assess how empathy levels influence the likelihood of selecting specific educational priorities. Additionally, I accounted for demographical influences by controlling variables such as gender, year of birth, education, and income levels. Next slide, please. And across all the empathy levels, this research found that there were some shared values and skills that participants considered important, including respect, history and geography, communication skills, life skills in general, and critical thinking. I think Maureen has already covered this in her presentation. However, there were notable differences between the high and low empathy groups in terms of their priorities. Participants with high empathy levels placed a strong emphasis on social and emotional learning. They prioritized the importance of respect, environmental awareness, and interpersonal skills. And these groups' emphasis on interpersonal and social issues suggest that they value education as a means to foster communication, community understanding, and emotional intelligence. On the other hand, participants with lower empathy levels focused more on practical and utilitarian subjects. Their priorities tended to revolve around finance, general knowledge, and learning skills. And this preference is not influenced by their income levels. Unlike the high empathy groups, they showed less concern for interpersonal or environmental issues, indicating a more individualistic approach to education. Next slide, please. Finally, I'd like to discuss the educational implications of these findings and how they can guide the future actions. First of all, there is a need to strike a balance between teaching empathy-focused subjects and practical skills. By integrating both, educators can create a curriculum that not only prepares young people for the workforce, but also for the complexity of living in a diverse and interconnected world. Secondly, young people have different cognitive and emotional needs, and this research exactly highlights the importance of providing flexible learning pathways and learning methods. We need to create spaces where all young people can thrive involves fostering empathy and social skills through interactive activities such as group discussion, collaboration, and community service. And of course, all of this cannot be achieved if our teachers do not have the equipped knowledge or equipped tools, and this should be supported by our policymakers. Considering the time, I'll just stop here for my sharing. Thank you all for your listening, and thank you again for this opportunity.
So thank you very much for the presentation, Cece. So I will continue my part. So good morning, everyone in New York, and good afternoon and evening for people elsewhere. I'm Jung-ho, Interim Deputy Dean of Academic and Quality at RMIT University in Vietnam. Since early this year, our research team, including Dr. Thao Leung, Dr. Matt Kim, Associate Professor Elaine Chu, Dr. Gwen Dang, and myself from RMIT University, started working on 3 projects based on the youth talk dataset. And we are very excited to present our key findings today. As part of the 3 projects our team developed, let me introduce my project first. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, our research team is from Vietnam, RMIT Vietnam, which is one of the 3 locations RMIT University operates along with Australia and Spain. And recently, a super typhoon Yagi landed on the northern side of Vietnam, which was recorded as the strongest typhoon in the last 30 years. The streets were flooded, and over 300 people were either died or missing. On the other hand, flooding streets became ordinary scene in Ho Chi Minh City and Mekong Delta areas, where people living just above the sea level due to rising sea levels. And this rapid climate changes and its impact indeed makes me anxious as a father of 2 years old when I see these dramatic climate disasters, since the worst time might not have come yet. I'm afraid that my 2 years old daughter might be the one who suffer the most in the near future, which motivates me to dig into the data set to understand further on the impact of this SDG-related anxiety on youth and their future education orientation. Next slide, please. Based on the massive data set with over 40,000 youth participants around the world, our team developed a PLS-SEM model based on Hutchwood method introduced in 2023, which converts qualitative data into quantitative measurement, as the data set contains a large amount of statements measuring causes of anxiety and education preference. Next slide, please. And this is what we learned from the research model. First, youth with higher level of SDG-related anxieties, such as worrying about climate changes and well-being, tends to prefer studying the 7 future skills identified by Koshu in 2022, including dialogue skill, digital STEM, enterprise skills, flexibility, high-order thinking skills, self-management, and value. Especially value-related skill sets such as discipline, which is closely related to sustainability, was strongly associated with SDG-related anxiety. Also, the current study posits that young students with higher empathy expressed a higher level of SDG-related anxiety, which is linked to the future-proof skill set mentioned earlier. Parents' education level, income, and age also shaped the student empathy level and oriented them to future-proofing skill set. Therefore, our study implies that educating our youth to equip them with empathy will be a critical foundation for solving the current SDG challenges, as their empathy will eventually guide them to solve them through their education. Second, young students from lower income classes might suffer more from the current SDG-related challenges, since they might have limited access to the relevant skill set for the future. Accordingly, our study suggests state-level macroeconomic policy and intergovernmental collaboration should focus more on our lower-income working classes as well as developing countries to overcome the gaps our study identifies. I still see the bright side of our findings. Our youth concerned about the future of our world, and it will eventually educate them to solve the critical issues as human beings have done through history. Thank you for your attention, and now I will hand it over to the next presenter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jungwoo, and hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to join in this session, and also thank you for the access to the great data set, which helped us a lot in understanding the youth. My name is Thao, and I'm also belonging to Dr. Jungwoo's team from RMIT University, Vietnam. Next slide, please. One of the research finding that our team has also focused on so far is whether the youth, whether empathy and the youth value basis contribute to their environmental concerns and their learning priorities. So next slide, please. I would like to introduce the background, a little bit about the background of our research. For this research, we focus on whether the youth, what make the youth concerned about environmental issues. As we base on the current literature and also the current knowledge that young generations are very much concerned about sustainability and about the environmental crises that are taking place all over the world. We've also focused on this topic because we know that in the future, as the organizing team has already emphasized, and by 2025, it is expected that the young people will be the one who lead organizations. They will represent most of the workforce at organization. So whether they are responsible or they care about environmental practices in organization will play a very important role. So we would like to find out what make them worry about environmental issues. So we will use the empathy. Next slide, please. We will focus on whether empathy, if you take a look at the diagram here, this is our research model, and the target variables in our model are the learning priorities of the youth, which you can see the number here, learn 9-8 and learn 9-10, would basically are coded based on the number of the question from the data set and then the macro cluster that come with the data set. And we use the binary coded variables. Basically, it means the variable will take the value of 1 if the environmental concerns are mentioned and 0 if environmental concerns are not mentioned. Environmental issues are not mentioned. And we also use a quantitative approach, which is PLS-SEM, discrete choice modeling, which is a method to find out the causal relationship between binary coded variables to see whether the youth concern about themselves, which are egoistic values, or concerns about the world in general, which are altruistic concerns, and biospheric concern, which is concern about the environment, whether these factors contribute to their learning priorities about environment. So if next slide, please. We figure out that using POS, SEM, DCM, empathy does not have impact on the youth environmental concerns and also their learning priorities for environmental issues. But when we test the relationship between egoistic, altruistic, and biospheric concern, they are positively, statistically significant positive effects. So we draw out some implication from some preliminary implication now. We think that it maybe educators in the field of environment, instead of focusing on touching young people empathy, which in the past we normally take showing them the scenery of the zoo and how animals are treated, maybe environmental education activities now should focus on demonstrating the truth about the current environment crisis and how these crises are impacting on the youth, on their life, on their future. And such knowledge would be expected to have a direct influence on ongoing worries and concerns about environment issues and triggering young people to learn more about measures for addressing environmental problems. We have limitation, but we'll be addressing these limitations and go further in our research. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, hello everyone. So my name is McKim from RMIT University, Vietnam. I will share key research findings of our research team on using empathy to enhance youth global citizenship. Next, please. Next, please. Okay. So we generally believe the vitamins are essential for good health. While our bodies produce them, sometimes we need supplements. It is important to remember that vitamins, even as supplements, scale chemical products. So when taking them, we must consider two key aspects. First, the vitamins themselves, such as types and required dosage. And second, the individuals taking them, such as their age and health conditions. Likewise, although empathy is often seen as a foundation for global citizenships, our study began with the questions. Is empathy always beneficial? And does it work the same for everyone? Just as we consider the side effect of vitamins, we should also think about the effectiveness of empathy and each potential side effect in different settings. Next, please. So to address these questions, we analyzed the youth data comprising over 10,000 responses from the Youth Talk dataset. We conducted a factor analysis and we identified three distinct categories of empathy: imaginative, relational, and hyper. The imaginative empathy is projecting oneself into the experiences and perspectives of fictional characters in media. And relational empathy is understanding others' perspectives and feelings in real relationships. Those two types of empathy have been seen as beneficial for developing global citizenships in many studies. So in this study, we identified the third type of empathy called hyperempathy, which hasn't been widely studied. It refers to being extremely sensitive to others' emotions, especially in emergencies. So now then use the logistic regulations to see if these three types of empathy improve youth's sense of global citizenship. Our analysis shows that youth with a higher level of imaginative and rational empathy are about 4% more likely to feel part of the global society. On the other hand, hyperempathy was found to be a negative factor. Youth with higher hyperempathy are over 4% less likely to feel a sense of global citizenship. Next, please. So can you generalize the research in every case? Probably not. We found that the impact of each type of empathy on global citizenship differs across the 4 continents: Africa, Asia, Europe, and North America. For American youth, only imaginative empathy improved global citizenships. However, for youth in other 3 continents, both imaginative and rational empathy had a positive impact. For Asians and North American youth, hyperempathy hindered the development of global citizenships. And specifically, Asian youth with a higher hyperempathy are 9% less likely to develop a sense of global citizenship, which is very substantial. Next, please. So to summarize, the youth empathy includes 3 types: imaginative, rational, and hyperempathy. Imaginative and rational empathy can help youth develop global citizenships, while hyperempathy can hinder it. And the negative impact of hyperempathy shows that empathy does not always improve global citizenships. Therefore, educators should help students develop imaginative and rational empathy and teach them how to manage hyperempathy. And as we have observed the different effect of empathy on global citizenship across continents, especially between African and Asian youth, it's very important to consider cultural and social factors when designing programs to foster empathy. So that's all of my presentation. Thanks so much. I will over it to the next presenter. Thank you so much.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. I'm Jill Miller, and I'm speaking from Oxford Brookes University in the United Kingdom, and I'm going to give you a brief summary of my research. So I'm doing qualitative research, focusing on words rather than numbers, And specifically, I'm exploring the interview texts generated by the wonderful Youth Talks initiative. I think it's amazing, and I think it's really so creative that you're engaging so many researchers across the world in investigating the data. So the title of my research is The Feeling Positions of Generation Z and a Reimagined Management Education. And feeling positions refers to the idea that emotions reinforce, strengthen, embed responses to sustainability when you're exploring responses to sustainability from a discourse perspective. So from a discourse perspective, the argument is that verbal, textual forms of communication influence the way that we can think and feel and act within society. They act as constraints. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So effective discourse analysis, the word effective adds an emotional dimension to the way that discourse operates to construct ideas. And as the slide says, effective discourse analysis is predicated on the assumption that affect or emotion informs the meaning-making processes revealed through discourse analysis. So the idea is that affect or emotion, however you want to refer to it, it's interchangeable, renders ideas sticky. It's the idea that you have a gut reaction to a particular idea, and that gut reaction, that emotional reaction, strengthens it and makes it harder to shift in many ways. So that is the focus. Could I have the next slide, please? Effective discourse analysis is quite a granular, slow-moving process. You're looking for tropes, for recurring patterns of thinking and talking within, in this case, the interview data, to see whether there are repertoires, recurring themes, recurring uses of phrases and cliches that reflect people's meaning making in relation to sustainability. And this is just one example where I've looked at a particular interview from an Australian individual aged 25 to 30, a young man who I've called Agave. Clearly he's not called Agave. And his responses to questions, I've started to look at them. And he says, in response to, he links worries about the future to environmental problems at a global level. He then links his responses, he's explicitly asked about his responses at an individual level, about what he's able to do in response. I'm willing to make a lot of changes. A lot of the respondents say that, talking about recycling, for example. And then in a final extract, which I couldn't get on the slide, he says when asked, what do people across the world, what would you like to ask your colleagues across the world about? He says, I'd like to ask them how they imagine the future and whether they see it as apocalyptic. So what we're getting is a juxtaposition between fears about global issues, a low-key individual response, and an overall concern, an overall brooding concern about the future. So what this seems to link into, next slide please, is potentially the idea that of helplessness, of hopelessness in terms of responding to the big issues, the wicked problems that we all face and that our students will face in the future. And so what I am getting, if this is a valid reading, if this is a valid repertoire that occurs again and again in the data, I would be arguing that we need to address this dimension of hopelessness, helplessness within sustainability education, so that that students do not have this strong fixed emotion that it is actually not possible for them to make changes even if they want to. I will finish there.
Hello, good evening from somewhere in Malaysia. I'm hoping my voice and more importantly, my internet's going to hold out. It is 10:15 in the evening here. So if we can move to the first slide, please. So myself and the Dean of the Business School here in Malaysia, we focused upon what people are willing to and not willing to give up for their vision future. But we wanted to take it from the cultural aspect. So if we move to the next slide. So youth today, unprecedented challenges. We've been through the pandemic, widening inequalities, climate change, biodiversity loss, health crisis, energy shortage. We also have a lot of global conflict currently, a lot of issues being faced, a lot of pressure upon the generation coming through. As we already discussed at the beginning of this session, artificial intelligence is another key concern which we have no answers for. These things are up and coming. We really don't know where it's going to go. So there's many risks and opportunities for that in the educational and the broader perspective for everyone. So the focus here was culture. This was my personal interest. I am a British man in Malaysia, which is a multicultural country. So for me, it's a very interesting aspect to study. And why? Because the culture shapes youth values and priorities. This will lead on to how they perceive sustainability, what's their priorities. All these things are going to make a big difference. So what we did was we used Hofstede's cultural dimensions, which many of you may be familiar with. We brought in that secondary data, and then we compared it to the two questions from the survey of what they're willing to give up to and what they're not willing to give up to. So we've already discussed the youth talk status. There's no need to go further there. So on to the next slide. The more important, the findings. So we used the open-ended questions, but they'd already been cluster analyzed for us into the meta clusters. So we cleaned the data, and when we ran analysis for multinomial logistics regression to look at how and where those with high traits and low traits were impacted on particular meta clusters. So what we found was there were significant cultural disparities in the youth attitudes towards making sacrifices. We are in the process of writing this up as a full academic paper, but what people are willing to give up is actually very small. But what people are not willing to give up, there was a huge variation, a lot more information. So this analysis indicated that cultural factors such as uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgent are a crucial role. And this focuses on the mental health priorities and economic system changes. For instance, youth from cultures with high uncertainty avoidance prioritize sustainability and security. So, as we all know, the unpredictability in storms, weather patterns through climate change, these are things they don't want. These are things that really concern them. Additionally, the results highlight that while the majority of young people express a readiness to alter their lifestyles, there are notable differences across regions, with Western countries showing higher willingness compared to Asian nations. However, I would like to put the emphasis in here, developed nations already have many things. Developing countries are still wanting to catch up. So we have a disparity there as well, which we need to further investigate. Next slide, please. So moving on to the importance from our brief summary, our analysis we ran, the recommendations for moving forward, what we can actually do to start addressing these issues. So the findings indicate that youth are reluctant to give up certain aspects, not everything, but certain things they are unwilling. So our recommendations to actually address this is the mental health support. So we need to promote positive coping mechanisms, especially with in cultures in high uncertainty, avoidance, and indulgence. So we need to help these people, especially in uncertainty avoidance. They seek stability, and sustainability and the issues being faced creates a lot of uncertainty, which puts a little mental strain on these people. These youth need support here. Economic reforms. So implement economic reforms that reduce the power imbalances, particularly in high power distant cultures. So for me, I'm in Malaysia. It's one of the highest on Hofstede's scale. The boss is the boss, we don't question it. So you have a lot of centralized wealth. How can this actually be better distributed to address the sustainability challenges we're facing? Social safety nets. So prioritize measures that enhance economic stability, such as social safety nets and job security programs, particularly in cultures of high uncertainty avoidance. Again, those of high uncertainty avoidance, they want security, they need it, it makes them feel safe. So if they're not guaranteed jobs and other metrics, so maybe there's flooding from extreme weather or hurricanes, typhoons like we're experiencing currently, they need some sort of safety net to catch them, because these are unexpected things that they don't really comprehend and they struggle to deal with when it happens. The final slide, please. Moving on with the recommendations, this is where I wanted to focus. So healthy lifestyles. Encourage lifestyle changes by investing in recreational facilities, public health campaigns, and subsidies for sports and fitness programs. So this is something we all struggle with. We live in the age of technology, AI is coming through, people are fixed to a computer screen or a TV screen. We need these activities coming back. We need this healthy lifestyle, which is also going to impact the mental well-being of people. So community engagement, similar idea. Cultural sensitivity in education is very, very important as well. We need to take in the different aspects of the culture. And then finally, youth participation in policymaking, especially in the high power distance, we need to have youth be able to speak up. And with that, I pass on to the next speaker. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, everyone. I am Ifat Saber. I'm joining you today from United Arab Emirates. I am HR Associate Professor from Al Ain University. Next slide, please. Now, being a part of the management team, one most important question that is on our heart all the time is how we can move on towards equity-oriented responsible education. That was the main inspiration behind the question that we chose to answer through this research. Next slide, please. So what we looked into is that how youth from different demographic diversity that is having an impact on their sustainability mindset, which might be affecting on their learning priorities. So the two things that we assessed over here is that how youth demographic diversity is influencing their sustainability and how that sustainability mindset can be influencing on their learning priorities. For sustainability mindset, we included empathy level, we included their global issues perceptions, and we included altruistic intention. So for global issues perception, question number 5, that was included in our analysis. For altruistic intention, to understand that whether they are willing to give up voluntarily, question number 6 was included, and to understand their learning priorities at school, question number 9 was analyzed. Now over here, we used structural equation modeling. And we analyzed at 2 levels. First, at the higher level, where we looked at the impact of youth demographics on their sustainability mindset and the learning priorities. Then we went to the lower level, where we looked into the gender-based differences, education-based differences, their age-based differences, the situation-based, and their identification, whether that is affecting on their sustainability mindset and learning priorities or not. Next slide, please. So the findings were very interesting because, yes, at the higher level, youth demographics was having a very positive influence on how they perceived the global issues. on how much they were willing to voluntarily give up on something so that they can have their desired future, and also on their empathy level. And all these three aspects of their sustainability mindset, they were influencing on the learning choices that they were having. Next slide, please. At the lower level, it was identified that basically age was not influencing on their sustainability mindset. Primarily, this result can be attributed that we included Generation Z and early millennials. Now, both of them, these cohorts, they are very close in their age group, so that might be the difference that they shared the consciousness level. However, gender had a significant difference in terms of what they perceived as the major global issues, the intentions of whatever they were willing to give up, and also on their empathy level. The education level was also having a positive impact, the income levels as well. Their current situation was influencing on the perception of global issues and the empathy level, and self-identification was affecting on all the three aspects of the sustainability mindset. Another important thing that I want to share, though it was not the major part of the studies, but it was very interesting, and I wanted to share with you that women, they were more focused on the personal growth and well-being and developing the sense of community and civic engagement. The people who were working and studying mostly from the upper middle class and having the higher level education, they prioritized to develop the sense of community and civic engagement, whereas the people from the lower and upper secondary education, they expected to develop more of their professional development in their learning programs. Next slide, please. The major findings that we received from this study is that the differences amongst the youth, that definitely affects on the kind of expectations that they have from their learning, from their programs. So it is important that their experiences and their insights should be included when we are developing our program learning outcomes. Also, the sustainability mindset, that is having an influence on what kind of expectations they have from their schools. So if we are looking to work on developing the responsible leaders for tomorrow, which actually is a mission of our school, it is important that their sustainability mindsets must be included as well. So the critical pedagogy theory, which suggests that it is important to include the experiences of youth into the learning programs, that was confirmed, and whatever we proposed, we could say that yes, that is having an influence on how the students and the learners they expect from their schools. Thank you so much.
Hi all. I'd like to start off by expressing my gratitude to the Higher Education for Good Foundation, UN Prime, and UBA Business School for supporting this research and providing the platform to explore the Youth Talks dataset. A special thanks goes out to my colleague Hawk, who was an integral part of this research. He demonstrated to me a true partnership in this research, and I deeply value his contributions in bringing this data to life. We see this research as crucial for understanding the empathy of our youth, which is foundational to building a future rooted in global citizenship and social justice. Our data sample, do we want to move ahead on the slides? Yes. Okay, that one, that's good. The original data sample was very large. Well, our analysis concentrated on a subset of that, and those are the ones that completed the 16 empathy items. It ensured data completeness, but at the same time, it may have limited generalizability to a smaller subset. Let me move on to slide 2. What we looked at here in our analysis is we focused on gender, income, and education, influencing empathy across 4 dimensions. Statistically, how we did that was we used both ANOVA and regression analysis to examine the relationship between these factors. We controlled, but we also controlled for country-specific effects to ensure that our findings were not simply reflecting cultural differences, but rather the true impact of gender, income, and education on empathy. Do you want to move to the next one? Key findings. What I'm going to focus on here are three things. One is gender, the second is perspective taking, and the third one is personal distress. Let me start out with gender. Gender specifically in relationship to females and non-binary individuals is significant across all four empathy dimensions. This indicates that females and non-binary individuals consistently demonstrate higher empathy levels compared to males. The overall effect emphasizes that gender, specifically females and non-binary, strongly shapes how empathy is experienced and expressed across both emotional and cognitive dimensions. Let me look at the second one here, perspective taking. If we look at perspective taking, we can see that it's significant across multiple factors, the most number of factors, as you can see. And it plays a critical role in understanding, but the effects are better understood when we look at the combination of factors here. The combination of gender, income, and education is important for understanding how cognitive empathy develops. Higher PT in these groups indicates a greater ability to understand and adopt others' viewpoints, essential for communication, cooperation, and global citizenship. As you can see here, education alone doesn't have a significant effect. However, when it interacts with gender and income, its effects on PT are enhanced, showing that education's role in empathy is dependent upon social context. The third thing I want to look at is personal distress, or highlight here is personal distress. What we found interesting here is that it's significant, but as a standalone, not in the interaction effects. So it's significant standalone factor influenced by gender, income, and education separately, but there's no significant interaction effects. This means that PD, personal distress, is not strongly shaped by the combination of factors. Each works separately. And education significantly reduces personal distress, which means that education systems should focus on emotional resilience programs to help individuals cope with distressing situations. Let me move on to the next slide. Oh my goodness. Limitations and future research. 3 limitations: the sample size. We used a smaller sample size. We only took the ones that completed 16 empathy items. Self-report data. There can always be bias with self-report data. And also, empathy and human behavior is complex. So it may require even additional statistical methods in terms of analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Budapest research team from Hungary, I would like to welcome you all. Please, next slide. It is an honor for me to be here and to share with you our analysis of the Youth Talks project related to aspects of work and work values. The transition to adulthood is a promising period, but making decisions about career, seeking a job, and finding a solid employment may be extremely challenging. And that idea was the starting point of our research. Next, please. The Youth Talks database allowed us to explore the aspects of working life of career starters. So we focused on young people who are still in higher education and are going to or already enter the labor market during the data collection phase. Our research aims to find out what are the greatest fears and hopes of the respondents in the world of work. How do career starters imagine their working life, and whether they already have a precise idea of their future job during the studies. The research presented here is a first step in developing the methodology. Therefore, we started the analysis on the British and French samples. But now I explain the development of the methodology from the beginning of our work. Next, please. As a first step to gain an insight into the Youth Talks content, we chose 10 interviews from the Youth Talks interviews with participants of different nationalities and coded them inductively the transcripts. At the same time, we examined AI-generated clusters and corresponding answers of the Youth Talks survey database. But we decided to develop a different coding scheme for deeper understanding using two approaches, deductively based on our previous research and inductively based on the answers. In the next step, we cross-check the database again to filter the work-related responses only. This left a total of 4,054 respondents in the sample. After finalizing the code scheme as a pilot coding, we have selected responses from 2 nations with a significant number of respondents, France and Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And we manually coded the answers into the established categories. The coding table contains 4 root codes. Please, next slide. Namely, work, which contains answers that relate to the characteristics of the job. Secondly, career, which includes thoughts about a planned career or the uncertainty of a desired career. Thirdly, workplace, which includes answers about the conditions and opportunities offered by the future workplace. And macro environment, which described the economic and social environmental aspects of work and career. The country comparison showed that French and Great British showed differences in how concerned they are about their job prospects. Next slide, please. If we look at the details, intrinsic motivation appeared to be the most important from French young people, especially the enjoyment of work as well as the fit of work. Please, next slide. Here we can see, please click one. Yeah, thank you. And for young people in the UK, on the other hand, concerns about the labor market, career uncertainty, and financial insecurity stand out. Please click. Yeah, and 2 more, and then we can see which are the columns I was referring to. For both nations, there were many responses about the need for work-life balance and the stable employment. In addition, and surprisingly for us, many young people raised the issue of retirement. Next, please. In addition to summarizing our results here, I also mentioned the next steps of our work. We will code all the work-related responses in the database and then compare the results by regions and continents. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, I'm here today from Oxford Brookes Business School, but representing a truly global team. If you can go to the next slide, please. Our study has the title Enabling the Education Revolution Through the Sustainability Mindset Principles, and this has been made up of a truly global team of researchers who are all here today, so I hope there's a few minutes at the end for them to be able to speak about the contributions that they made. You can see Russia, Australia, Canada, UK and Germany, and we were particularly honoured to be led and advised in our work by Isabel Rymanowski, who is the convener of the working group, the PRIME working group on the sustainability mindset principles. So this is truly a collaborative effort that I have the pleasure to speak to you about today. Next slide, please. If you haven't heard of the sustainability mindset, then Isabel's definition is that this is a way of thinking and being
which results from a broad understanding of the ecosystem, social sensitivity, and an introspective focus on personal values and the higher self. So as soon as I saw this call for research, which is, and obviously one of the conclusions from Youth Talks was about the need for values-led education, it was a perfect fit to be looking at and applying, well, how does this then map to the sustainability mindset principles, which actually provide a ready-made framework for educators to move into a learning context and to be able to develop what Isabel calls intentional behaviours that are based around positive psychology principles and helping us all act towards the greater good. There won't be time today to break down the framework that you see here, but it's made up of 4 content areas, and within those 4 areas there are 12 specific mindset principles. So our task was to look at how can we map those principles against the voices that youth are expressing, which helps us to understand the sustainability mindset principles more deeply. And then based on our own expertise as sustainability mindset researchers and practitioners, how can we help to communicate the value of this data from Youth Talks through the ready-made framework that the sustainability mindset principles provides. And I've put all these animations in, which are just going to confuse things. I'll have the next animation, please. Thank you. So I will take, having listened to all this amazing, rigorous research presentation so far, I will describe what we did as rigorous, pragmatic research. We looked from a very exploratory basis at all of the survey data and all of the interview data, wanting to make initial mapping sense of how it does align to all of the 12 differing SMPs. Next slide. So it was very much a pedagogic project from the outset. It was wanting to make recommendations for educators of how the sustainability mindset principles can be used, can be applied in practice, that's directly responding to the views that have been expressed by global youth. So our first task, as we came together and puzzled as to how we could best go about this, was we decided that in order to map those principles, the 12 principles, against all of the youth views, we needed to see all of it. We didn't want to narrow it down to a particular region of the world yet, or we didn't want to narrow it down to a particular number of SMPs, and this could all be next steps as we move forward. So we wanted to map all of the 12 of the SMPs across all global regions. Secondly, then, we did want to draw on the analysis that is so well written up in the Youth Talks publications around the generalization over the view that's been adopted over East versus West. We wanted to stick with the analysis, keep our analysis deeply rooted in Global Youth Talks analysis to make sure that there was a very clear alignment. And then based on that, we wanted to make educational recommendations over how youth voices data can be used to can be responded to through the application of the SMPs. Next slide, please. So this is the complicated one. Beginning at the top, then, our first job was to look at each of the 12 sustainability mindset principles. And I'm using an example here to help the journey of consistency. So we divided up amongst the team particular mindset principles, and you'll see those on the next slide. So with long-term thinking, which is one of the systems perspective principles, that was aligned with particular survey questions. So the example here is that it aligned to question 6 of the survey. To build this desired future, I would be ready to give up the following things. and we would provide a rationale for why we had mapped particular principles to particular survey questions. Some of them were a very natural fit, and it was very easy and obvious that that question was leading towards a particular sustainable mindset principle. In other cases, it was more implicit and intuitive, which is why we wanted to stay so rooted in the survey findings itself. So the pragmatic approach then was to use the machine learning analysis results. That suited me in a very simplistic way of being able to use this data in a way that I could actually understand, not being a quantitative researcher. So we used the box that you see on the left that you might be familiar with that very clearly showed for each question, which as you see here, almost 30,000 contributions to that question, 144 themes were generated. So in order to make sense of that, we took the top 3 most popular responses from each question and put that into our own Excel spreadsheet. So with the long-term thinking, now looking at the middle box in that spreadsheet, you can see the 3 top themes in response to the question were around youth would be willing to give up material consumption, personal resources, and lifestyle activities. And you can see the differentiation in the top rows between what was categorized as the East by Youth Talks and what was categorized at the West. So looking specifically at material consumption, there is and we had our own color coding. Don't be distracted by the colors don't align between the 2 boxes. We had our own color coding, and on looking at material consumption, red and purple there at the bottom for Western Europe were very high. So this is showing that there's a marked difference, for example, here between youth in the West being very concerned about their levels of material consumption as compared to youth in the East that were not showing this marked concern. And in comparison to the West, if you look at the column at the end, the Eastern youth were more concerned with aspects such as moral flaws and personal ambitions. So translating that to the long-term thinking principle then, which is all about time horizons in decision making, it's already showing that youth all over the globe are very much aware of the connection between their own personal behaviours and the future that they want to see. So this is good. This is a hallmark of responsible leadership. And it can strengthen our educator insights by beginning to understand those differences between, well, what's driving youth in the West who've got this dissonance in how they're feeling, this discomfort with their material consumption habits, and how that's impacting their view towards how that's going to impact the future that they want. Whereas the East are showing greater alignment with traditional Eastern values around more collective societies. So this is helpful when bringing in a longer term perspective in discussion with students by helping them to understand East versus West. And we also backed this up with illustrative interview findings. The very final slide, therefore, sorry to go over, it's been about 10 minutes. This is our group of researchers, and this shows the activities that we indicated within the report, giving some very pragmatic educational recommendations for researchers to be able to pick up and go with. Thank you.
Wow. I'm almost speechless. It doesn't happen very often, but what a session that was. I mean, truly, truly inspirational. So let me start first before I say a few words. Thank you to Gigi at St Andrews in Scotland, to Jungwoo, Tan Tao and Gyeong Hoon in Vietnam, to Jill Miller at Oxford Brookes for her discourse analysis, and Karen Cripps, who just finished about the sustainability mindset principles. And then we have Stephen Homer and Zaik from Malaysia. Ifat Sabir joined us from the United Arab Emirates with fabulous take on the Youth Talks data, as did Frank Longo and colleagues in Brussels. And of course, we had our wonderful team in Budapest, Hungary, the team of Frosina, Anita, and Melinda, and there's one more name escapes me. Well done, and thank you for engaging with us. I'm gonna just say a few words to sort of try and wrap up on this. I mean, in my previous introduction before the researchers, I was saying that the Prime Higher Education for Good Youth Talks research partnership is characterized by diversity in terms of the nationalities, the perspectives taken, the research methods used, the scope of the research. And it's truly fabulous. But let's put it in the context of what this session is about. We are sitting here today, we've come together as colleagues with a passion for making sure that the youth voice is heard in the sphere of education so that we can have the future that we all crave for. So the idea was to elevate the voice of shaping responsible leadership for a sustainable future. And I think that the work presented, first of all, the general overview, the work presented by Marine and then Rodolphe, looking at the bigger picture, and then our 10 groups of researchers from around the world taking different perspectives on youth data. I think it shows that what we've done is, in a very short time, we've gone some way to drawing on the world's biggest ever consultation, biggest ever collection of data from youth, to make sure, to take efforts to make sure that this voice of youth is heard in educational policy making. Furthermore, I think that I hope that we've demonstrated the potential impact that rigorous research using different methods rigorous methods used on the Youth Talks data can have on the transformation of education at all levels, but in particular on higher education policy and responsible management education. What struck me about all of the presentations was the strong emphasis on the human aspect, the craving. You could hear the voice of youth, if you like, crying out to us and sending a very strong message. And that message has got to get, it's got to get to decision makers in educational policy making. Could I ask the Prime team to put my last slide on the screen, please? I wanted to share this with you because I did say that before I introduced the researchers that it's about a year, more or less, that Prime signed this agreement with Higher Education for Good to give access to the Youth Talks data to Prime researchers. And it took us a while to get the show on the road. And I'm going to share a little personal event with you regarding the development of this project, because we got it going in about February or March. And those bricks that you can see on this diagram, they are the building blocks, if you like. We didn't know at that stage, in February or March, myself and Rodolphe and Marine and colleagues in the Prime Secretariat, we didn't know what we were going to come up with. But we know after today, it's been testimony that we've come up with something that is quite substantial and shows huge potential for feeding into the United Nations Pact for the Future agenda and looking for action in the area of responsible management education. The personal bit of information I wanted to share with you, and don't feel sorry for me, was on March the 27th, just as I was kicking off meetings with researchers in different parts of the world, and obviously with Rodolphe, I had a huge heart attack. And I was in hospital for 3 days, and I nearly died, to be honest with you. And at this stage, obviously, my wife said, "Oh, Alec, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I've got this meeting tomorrow with researchers from Prime and Higher Education for Good." And it's something that I truly believed in. And as we end this session, and I'm going to give you over to Marine Hadeng in a moment, and I'd like to assure you that my heart is working perfectly well and I'm feeling absolutely great. All the more so for participating in today's session. But from those little bricks that Prime and Higher Education for Good Foundation started to build in September 2023, I think that we've got the foundations of something very significant. I think that on the right of the slide, you can see a lot of powerful minds from around the world, of scholars in the area of higher education that want to make a difference. And we're at the building. We're building in the yellow cloud, if you like. We're on the verge of building something super, super important that can have impact and feed into the agenda of the UN's Pact for the Future. So I thank you all. I thank you to the Higher Education for Green and OMID. I thank the Prime Secretariat for organising this event fabulously well. To Rodolphe for being such a fabulous colleague, giving expert advice and feedback and keeping me going. And of course, once again, to all the researchers. And on that note, if you want to join us, please get in touch. And on that, I'm going to pass on to Marine Hadeng, the driving force behind Youth Talks. Marine, for some final words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alec. I mean, I didn't know about the heart attack episode. I'm so sorry to hear that, but I'm so glad that you're still with us. So please take care. I will only build on what you just said. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but half of the world's population is under 30 years old. So while they may not have decades of experience, these young people have an interesting understanding of our world that we cannot afford to overlook. It is essential that we listen to them and give them a voice so we can co-create a sustainable future together. We still have work to do, of course, but today's session showed a genuine commitment to engaging with young people, consulting them without imposing our mindset, and truly valuing their insight to drive, I would say, positive societal change. This effort wouldn't be possible without the hard work of the Youth Talks teams, of course, and as you have seen today, the invaluable contributions of researchers. From the bottom of my heart, guys, I would like to thank you all. You cannot imagine how much it means to me and to the team to see you, the researchers, using Youth Talks material and dataset to produce and share these amazing insights. All this is the results of this incredible partnership between Prime and the Higher Education for Good Foundation. We are committed, I think, Alec, we are committed to strengthening this partnership in the future to ensure Youth Talks has the greatest possible impact. We owe it to the young people around the world who have contributed. So thank you all, and a special shout out to Prime, Alec, and Rodolphe for making this a reality. I wish you all an amazing online or in-person summit of the future. Thank you very much.